This technical seminars are an Intertech production. For instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.
Now, sometimes when you look at what it generated, you'll actually see some escape characters before the first key, before username, and that's because some editors are going to save some initial bits of data that specify the encoding, and sometimes native to ASCII will try to translate that. So if you have any characters before your first key, just delete them. You can get rid of it that way. But what you're seeing here is now I've got a regular ASCII file. This is with the characters that have been encoded, so that the file can be read and it can be discovered. And now if I move this into my package here, so I'm going to move this into my resources, and I'm going to get rid of that Japanese file that was not working, so I'll delete that. And yes, I'm definitely sure. And now I will rename the one I just created using native to ASCII. So let's just get rid of that new part out of there. Alright, so now when we run this program again, you'll see that the locale is Japanese. Now it's printing out question marks, and that's only because my display here is not configured to display UTF-8 characters in the console, so it's just printing question marks. But if I was to actually use a web program or a regular program, and I specified that the encoding was UTF-8, this would be translated perfectly. So as far as the application is concerned, it works great. In this particular environment, you happen to be seeing question marks, but in a real environment, that would not be the issue. So you use this native to ASCII tool to take UTF-8 characters and translate them into ASCII so that they can be read in by your property file. You'll also do this a lot when you're working with JSPs if you're trying to use some of these double byte and characters that are not found in the ASCII or Latin 1 character set. You can run the native to ASCII program that will escape them for you, and then you can save them in files that are in your regular encoding of 8859-1. So the confusion gets to be here was, well, I thought we have to encode everything in UTF-8. Well, you do. I mean, that's what's actually going to be sent across the wire, and that's what the browsers, for example, and your web applications need to be able to read in. But your own data stores, like when you're saving your own property files, you first create them in regular ASCII 8859-1. They'll be read into the program and translated into Unicode. And once there is Unicode, once we then send it to what the user is going to see, that's the point where it needs to be UTF-8. And that's why we need to specify the encoding in our JSPs and our servlets. So the final part of the presentation on globalizing your Java app is to point you to some third-party tools that are available. So whenever you use third-party, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions as to why you want to use it. Does it provide functionality that you don't have available to you in the regular Java API? Does it perform a little bit better in certain areas? And maybe is it easier to use? And one particular set of tools that I want to point you to is IBM's ICU4J, and the answer to those questions is pretty much yes all across the board. The ICU4J project is part of a bigger project. There's actually many different language bindings. Java just happens to be one, and the main purpose is that standards are evolving. So the Unicode standards is evolving. The way that we use internationalization in our applications is evolving. And if we need to wait for the JDK to be released to support this evolving standards and whatnot, we're going to wait quite a long time because JDKs aren't produced all the time or very frequently. So IBM, by pulling this out, is able to react to the market in a much faster manner. So as a result, by using ICU4J, you're able to take advantage of the latest developments and the most evolved standards that are available to us. So take a look at IBM's ICU4J. A lot of the usage is very similar to what we've seen in this through the Java API. So the learning curve really isn't too bad at all for using ICU4J. A couple other examples I want to point you to. The purpose, again, is not to be exhaustive in terms of showing you all the different ways that you can implement internationalization, but really just to show you that, a lot of the tools and frameworks that you're already using do contain some built-in hooks to internationalization. So JSTL, the tag library, for example, if you're using those, you can use the format library inside of JSTL, and they have some tags like set bundle to grab your resource bundles, and setting locales, grabbing a message by passing in a key. JSF has its own version as well, their own tags inside of the core and HTML tag libraries, for example. You can use load bundle to grab a particular resource bundle name and use the output text tag using the bundle and the key name that you want to look up. So quite a few different ways to do the same thing. The patterns are pretty much the same. It's just that a lot of the different frameworks and tools and will have their own implementation, so to make it easier for you to implement internationalization. So that's what you spend the bulk of your time doing when you're creating your globalized application. So what does it mean to localize? As I mentioned, localization, this is the point where we're creating our resource bundles. And so what you're going to work with typically is a translation service that may be internal to your company, it may be external, but somebody's going to be doing this for you. And so what you need to do is you need to grab all of your resource bundles that you've created, which will be in whatever your particular region or native language is in, and you'll submit that to that group and say, please, do some appropriate translations. What's a really good idea, even if they don't suggest this, is to take screenshots of the areas and give functional descriptions of what the string means and what it's going to do. That will help them to translate this, each of the different messages and whatnot appropriately, because it's very, very possible to have a correct word translation, but the word in a particular context may mean something vastly different than you would expect. For example, if you said something like tab to a field, there may be a language which has, translate that word field to not mean, a section of your screen, but a field in nature. So the context of the word is really important, and it may produce a completely different word, one that you don't expect, without having this kind of screenshots with functional descriptions. So it's a real good best practice, even if they don't request it. Localized testing, you're just going to need somebody that really understands the region, that understands the language, that understands the culture, so that they can test for correctness in grammar. They can do cultural considerations to tell you, this particular image in this particular context is offensive or confusing. And then, of course, there's the other kind of testing that can be done by pretty much anyone, and that's more about how is the GUI looking after this language has been applied. Is there any displacement of the, text fields, for example? Is it being, after it's been translated, are the characters expanding so much that all of the screen elements are getting squished together? That kind of testing can be done pretty much by anybody. So a few different books, few different resources that I've included. You'll notice that a lot of these books are from the earlier part of 2000, and that's because a lot of this hasn't changed. A lot of these approaches and libraries and best practices have been fairly stable, so a lot of these books are still extremely valuable. If you download the slides at the URL that I had at the beginning of this presentation, you'll have the slide and be able to check out these resources. In addition,
for more free learning resources and to see the latest lineup of our instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.